As in today, different countries have different levels of social and economic development that are caused by many factors, such as physical, economic, environmental, political, historical, even natural resources. Those factors determine whether a country has a low income or an upper middle income, or a higher income. A low-income countries are those that has the weakest economic that has already been evaluated by the World Bank. And then a higher income countries are those that has the highest economies that has already been calculated or evaluated by the World Bank. Now, as of the 2023 fiscal year, low-income countries are those with a gross national income, or we may call it GNI, per capita that are calculated using the World Bank Atlas method of $1,085 or less in 2021, and high-income countries are those with a GNI per capita $13,205 or more. Why does this exist in the economic world, and how does this affect the economic growth? Now, one of the main reasons is that some countries can find themselves in a cycle of poverty, and the root that caused a country to have this problem is not only it lack an access to basic necessities of life, but they lack inequities such as poor governance, conflicts or war, exploitation, and many more. Now, these things bring damage to the economic growth because countries are unable to invest in human capital, physical capital, and healthcare. Now, according to the effective state and inclusive development, instead than expanding an economic output as a goal in and of itself, economic growth is very crucial for fostering social advancement, such as raising equity and well-being. From both the Office of Management and Budget and CBO estimate that greater economic growth would be better for the fiscal future. Now, they have discovered 1 percentage point rise in annual economic growth would be a result in a $300 billion reduction in deficits over 10 years, which mostly through higher revenues. Now, through this research, we want to focus to seek and analyze the economic growth to upper middle income countries and lower income countries. Now, both of these income countries is obtained through the World Development Indicators by the World Bank. So measures a country's economic well-being. We utilize GNI per labor in constant 1991, and we have set 3 control variables to achieve a detailed analysis which is investment per GNI, schooling, and a labor growth plus depreciation from 1991 to 2019. Now, in this research, we have determined annual growth of GNI as the definite variable to measure a country's economic well-being. And for the variable of interest, we use the initial GNI 1991 as an indicator. To first see the correlation between those 2 variables, we will be using the OLS regression method. Now, to increase the accuracy of this research, we have determined 3 control variables, as I've said before, and the data for all of the variables above are obtained through the World Development Indicators of the World Bank data. Now, in this case, we have decided to analyze the 1991 data. Aside from that, we have selected 217 countries as our sample size. And to further see the correlation between our dependent and independent variables, we have decided to split our sample into 2 categories, which are high-income countries and non-high-income countries. We have determined those categories in order to see whether our hypothesis is correct, and the higher the Women Business and Law Index, the higher the GDP per capita of certain countries. In this case, there are 53 high-income countries and 27 non-high-income countries. For our research and produce more concrete results, we use all variables to conduct the research method. Now, the research method used is quantitative in nature and is carried out in econometrics views. The data is also used in the form of logarithm. So this paper is based on the MRW paper. We also built a solid model and take human resources into account. Now, in general, we can conclude from the regression results of the initial GNI, variables per employed person, investment per GNI, school and labor force growth, and depreciation are correlated with annual GDP growth, and this indicates a correlation. This shows that when the initial GNI per person worked, the level of investment per GNI increases. However, the relationship between population growth and human capital has a negative relationship. That is, the increase that occurs between population growth is followed by a decrease in human capital. This is also similar to the relationship between annual GNI growth and initial GNI per person employed. Now, the weakness of the MRW paper is that they look at the human capital, especially schools, not a higher education. The regression results show that secondary education is not as important as when Mankiw, Romer, and Will were published. This is the only limitation we encountered when reviewing this, documentation. The rest prove that the Solo model can still be used to predict economic growth, but it only shows that higher education is as important to capital as any other variable. Now, in low-income countries, it can be seen that the movement of each regress variable on average has increased, especially when entering human capital. That is, in low-income countries begin to pay attention to their human capital for economic growth. However, this is in contrast to high income has a positive connotation. This may be due to a large number of jobs and workers are given high wages so that workers in high-income countries are also invest on average both domestically and abroad. In addition, the level of education is of great concern for high-income countries.